And vegans, wake up, open up your eyes. Your country needs you. Hope you realize our government is abusing its power and authority, and it is having adverse effects on the whole country. It is time for us to take a stand. After all, this is our native land. That is why I came back to sing, to expose the wicked things they're perpetrating. It is only time for the self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All the scheming, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. Prime Minister, acts like a dictator. If with him you don't agree, you can't progress in your country. Our government has no respect for the business community. No dialogue, they only causing us indiscipline. Taxing the poor ones who have no money, while their friends live in luxury. As a family and the Prime Minister and them young boys think they're on Antigua. It is only time for the self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All the scheming, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. Island and victimization to those who express dissatisfaction with the way this government's wandering this country's revenue, accepting no accountability for the underhand things they does do, ostracizing those who say they are no good, and rewarding their friends some with knifewood. Hurricane mash up me clay and Halcyon. I oppose them so they come and take back the land. It is only time for the self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All the scheming, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. I am the boss. Don't man dare oppose me. Ask God and Marshall. Look what I did to Percy. He was standing in the way of my daughter's future. So I demoralized him with the aid of the newspaper. But the time this man's mentality, will my people be bought out by duty-free? If we don't remove them in the next election, it will be a disaster for the future generation. So I will leave them alone, let them self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All this giving, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall.
You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. See myself as a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Guyana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space. I'm David.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.
Surmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. Island and victimization to those who destruction. With the way this government's squandering this country's revenue, accepting no accountability for the underhand things they does do, ostracizing those who say they are open, and rewarding their friends some with knifewood. Hurricane mash up the place and Halcyon. I oppose them, so they come and take back the land. It is only time before they self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All the scheming, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. I am the boss, don't oppose me. Ask God and Marshall, look what I did to Percy. He was standing in the way of my daughter's future, so I demoralized him with the aid of the newspaper. But the economy, this man's mentality, will my people be bought out by duty-free? If we don't remove them in the next election, it will be a dark day for the future generation. So I will leave them alone, let them self-destruct. Greed and power is their TNT. Their purpose in government was for the bucks. They don't really care about this country. All this killing, conniving plans have caught up with them. They are facing insurmountable problems, and just as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. The handwriting.
Yes. The handwriting is on the wall. This government must fall. This government must fall. Good evening to you. Early start this evening. The voice and the wisdom there of King Short out of Antigua. You could close your eye and think he's singing there about Guyana. There's similarity, so much similarity in our Caribbean political experience and cultural experience. That when the singers sing about one place, they really are singing about all of this. Government must fall. The handwriting is on the wall. The handwriting is on the wall. The handwriting is on the wall. And the next election has to be decisive, Please share the link and let everyone know we're on. We're on a little bit early because I have to skip away at 7:30, I think. 7:30. I will be on Globe Span tonight. We'll try to get the link on Politics 101 so you can follow the program. Emmanuel McLean, King Short, the handwriting is on the wall. The handwriting is on the wall. And as sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. We have reached that point. We have reached that point where we have to call a spade a spade. We have to call a spade a spade. There are those like myself who believe ultimately, our country is only going to progress when we bring the representatives of all our people, all our races, all our ethnicities, all our classes, all our sexes, when we bring all our people together under one national government, that will ultimately be the time when all Guyanese can sit back and say that they are represented in government. That is our ultimate dream, our ultimate aspiration. But in the meantime, and as the DJs would say, in between time, we've got to do what we got to do. We've got to keep moving. We've got to keep moving. This government has to get out of the way. All single party governments have been disasters. Even when we have had a coalition, we had a coalition of two parties, 1964 to 1968. And then between 2015 and 2020, we had a coalition of several parties. But although they were coalitions, they were dominated by one big party. So there was not any big shift in terms of larger representation. But at least it was a start. My support for the coalition government in 2015 and my support again in 2020 had to do with the fact that I had a choice between a single party which was determined to govern Guyana and dominate Guyana, and another party which at least said it was prepared to go into government with others. And I took the choice of the one that says it prefer a broader government. And that continues to be my outlook on politics, my outlook on politics. And so the PPP was handed power in 2020, and in 4 years, look what they have done. They've got to go. As soon, as sure as the sun will rise, this government must go. The handwriting is on the wall. Good evening to those of you who are joining us from Antigua. Those of you who are joining us from Antigua and Barbuda, good evening. We came in tonight, of course, with the voice of Emmanuel McLean, King Short Short, the man who gave us "Nobody Go Run Me," from where me come from, me papa must nyam, me mama must nyam. Who gave us Tourist Lego, Tourist Lego, caused a sensation. I think it was in 1976. In fact, the Trinidadians banned Tourist Lego from being part of the road march. It was sure to win the road march in that year, and the National Carnival Committee banned the Calypso, saying that Short Short was not a Trinidadian. It was quite a thing. It was quite a thing. But we've come a long way since then. You know, Trinidad itself is a cosmopolitan place, perhaps the most cosmopolitan of the entire Caribbean. You just have to check Calypsonians. A lot of them either were born in Grenada or their parents were from Grenada. Some of them came from St. Kitts, St. Lucia, and so forth, and they ended up there in Trinidad. In fact, Laventille, they used to call it Little Grenada. And so Trinidad itself, very cosmopolitan. I remember George Lamin saying when he went to Trinidad first in the 1950s, it was difficult to find a Trinidadian, that most of the families were, you know, Trinidadian mother, Grenadian father, Kittitian mother, Trinidadian father, and so on. Very cosmopolitan place. And so therefore it was quite shocking in 1976 when they took that move. But we've come a long way since then. We've come a long way since then. We remember Jamaica voting to opt out of the West Indies Federation in 1962. And we've come a long way since then. You know, Jamaica was all the way up there in the north, like Bahamas. They were not, in a sense, integrated into the larger Caribbean for geographical reasons, because they were all there in the north. All of that has changed now. Jamaica is very much part of our Caribbean. Bahamas, yes, to a large extent, but still, Bahamas look, for the most part, northwards. And I think one of the things about the Bahamas is that they don't play cricket. At least, they play cricket there. I've seen cricket played in the Bahamas, but they're not formally part of the West Indies. If they played cricket, then, it will bring them closer, as Jamaica, over time, became closer to the Caribbean. Belize, which is out there in Central America, the only English-speaking country in Central America, very much Caribbean in everything they do. But again, because of geographical considerations, they tend to be somewhat more Central American than they are Caribbean. But a lot of that has changed over time. Our Caribbean has become much closer. It's interesting because Guyana, which is not geographically in the Caribbean Sea, but nevertheless, culturally and politically, always Caribbean. Perhaps as my colleagues in the wider Caribbean would tell me, that you Guyanese are more Caribbean than the rest of us, in the sense that you didn't find the kind of parochialism in Guyana as you found in other parts of the region, and a little of that has changed now that Guyana has found oil, and there is a tendency sometimes to ask for revenge because of how Guyanese were treated in places like Barbados and Antigua and so on. But thank God, if you go to Antigua now, you go to Barbados, you go to St. Kitts, Guyanese are integrated in those countries, and they're very much part of those countries, very much part of those countries. And so good evening to all of you who are joining us from the wider Caribbean. Those of you who are joining us from in Guyana, good evening. Please share the link. We are on a little bit early, so I guess the larger crowd is going to join us in a couple of minutes. I have to leave a little bit early today. I committed to doing a program once per month on GlobeSpan for now, and so I'll be over there from 7:30 this evening. We're going to try to share the link on Politics 101 page, so for those of you who want to follow the program. So the handwriting is on the wall. This government has to go. That has to be our resolve. But the government will go if we plan correctly and if we execute our plans correctly. It is clear that the government has to go. We are not in the age of revolution and all of that, so the option is the ballot box. The option is the ballot box. The option is the democratic way. But we know that there are problems with the ballot box. We found that out in 2020. In 2020, we found out that there were ways in which our elections could be rigged long before election day. The so-called opinion shapers, some of them do not want to go there. They want to make the problem, they want to make the problem of rigging a partisan problem and an ethnic problem. But the problem of electoral rigging is a problem that is enshrined in the electoral architecture of our country. CARICOM said that, the CARICOM observers, which were quite friendly with the government and which contributed to the installation of the government, they nevertheless said that GCOM in the state that they found it in 2020 could not deliver credible elections. Yet they said the elections brought the PPP to power. Quite a contradiction, but we have moved on from that. What we are talking about is the electoral architecture. We have to ensure that the electoral architecture is cleaned up so that all participants have an equal chance of winning a majority. Because in the first instance, you have to win a majority. The PPP is resisting all attempts to clean up the machinery. There are two big issues. There are other issues, but the two big issues is the question of the voters list and the question of voter impersonation. And we saw how the voters list bloated by some 200,000 names, 200,000 extra names are on that list. And how one can maneuver 5,000, 10,000, it takes 5,000 to win a seat. So if you can maneuver 5,000 votes, there you go. You have your majority there. And the PPP very skillfully did that in 2020. Very skillfully did it in 2020. And they were caught only after they accused the coalition of attempting to rig. And their charge, their accusation of the coalition of attempting to rig is what in the end skinned them up. So in their attempt to skin up the coalition, they end up skinning up themselves. And that is why it would have been interesting to have the elections petition heard. But they found ways and means to duck the petitions and to ensure that the petitions were not heard. Of course, on our side, it wasn't held because papers were turned in late, and the court used that technicality to throw out the petition. I did not agree with that decision. I did not agree with that court decision. I thought on a matter of election, something as important as elections, because elections determine who governs, and that something as important as election, the petition should not have been thrown out on those technical grounds of late filing of papers. I think the judge took a very conservative approach and stuck to the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law. Had the judge taken into consideration the spirit of the law, then she could have allowed that petition to go forward. But she took a very conservative, a very minimalist reading of the law. And so the petitions were not heard. But if those petitions were heard, I think the government could not have escaped. The PPP could not have escaped. Not the charge of attempting to rig, but the charge of actual taking advantage of the inherent weaknesses of the electoral system to tamper with the election. And in an election that was as close as the one, then it was a grave charge. And so as we move forward in the next election, we have to take care of those problems. If we don't take care of those problems, then we are in trouble. Good evening to all of you, those of you who are joining us from outside of Guyana, North America, the wider Caribbean, Europe, Central America, Africa. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to all of you wonderful people. I notice Mr. Newton, Orrin Newton from Buxton joining us. We would like to extend the condolences to the family of Rudolph Thomas, known to Buxtonians as Walkabout. Good friend, good friend. Very, very interesting guy. I had the opportunity of spending a lot of time with him in his company when I was last in Guyana last year. It's difficult to take, you know. It's difficult to take. Always a very fit guy, you know, one of those guys who, what you call tough. He was a fight man, you know, short and but strong. And passed away, walkabout. Rudolph Thomas, condolences to his family and his friends. Buxton frontman, he was a Buxton frontman. But you wouldn't know it because he wasn't the typical Buxton frontman. You know, we always say people at the front side are conservative, you know. They hear a noise outside at night, they don't open the window, they just pull the blind and peep out. As opposed to if you're from Bagdam side, or you're from central part of the village. But Walkabout was one of those front side banners, we said, that could have come from any part of the village. And to all his friends, you know, all his friends, Walkabout, riders, you know, condolences. It's always difficult to lose someone. He wasn't sick. I understand he just complained of belly pain, and in a matter of days he was gone. We have to face the mortality. Welcome to Politics 101 tonight. Welcome to Politics 101 tonight. We are sounding the bell here that the handwriting is on the wall and this government has to go. For the good of Guyana. For the good of Guyana. At some point, as I said, my objective in politics is a national government. And I don't think you can have a national government without the representative of East Indians. And East Indians vote for the PPP, whether we like it or not. And ultimately, you know, we have to deal with the PPP, and East Indians have to deal with the PNC, because Black people, for the most part, vote for the PNC. And we have to come to grips at some point. We have to come to grips. Do you think that former PM, I think Miranda is asking me one of those questions there. Do you think that former PM Bruce Goldin was not fair in his comments about never? Who's Bruce Goldin? Since when Bruce Goldin becomes an authority? Bruce Goldin came to Guyana as they all came to Guyana. And they all do not understand the dynamics of Guyanese politics. I can say that to Bruce Goldin, Owen Hart, and the rest of them, and I have respect for them. Bruce Goldin is a former prime minister. But they do not understand Guyana. I go to conferences all the time in the Caribbean, and they're Caribbean scholars who teach about the Caribbean, but do not have an inkling about the complexities of Guyana and Guyanese politics. If you're from Jamaica, you don't have to deal with ethnic problems. Jamaica is a place that's 90-something% Black. And so when you're talking about ethnic politics and its dynamics, the Jamaicans don't have to deal with that. And so Bruce Goldin came to Guyana without an understanding of the complexities of Guyanese politics. And that's where they all fell down. That's where they all fell down. I think even we Guyanese sometimes struggle to understand our own politics. And you see, look, politicians are politicians. I heard the PPP saying after the elections, well, look, we won the elections because everyone said we won the elections. The external people said we won the elections, as this brown person is saying here. And the court said we won the election. But yet when the court today said to the very PPP that the teachers' money should not be deducted, that the teachers' strike was legitimate, they cost the court blue. And the very CARICOM that you are talking about, Bruce Golden and others, this government, PPP government, has no time for CARICOM. Never did. The PPP never took Guyana into the West Indian Federation because Dr. Jagan said that Indians would feel as a minority in a larger West Indian nation, a larger West Indian government. And for a long time, the PPP felt that CARICOM was a black people club. And because CARICOM signed off on them, in this installation, they're singing the praise of CARICOM, but I tell you, tomorrow, if CARICOM move another way, they'll cost CARICOM blue. The PPP is not an integrationist party. It is not. It is not an integrator. It has never been fulsome in its support of regional integration. It has never been fulsome. And I understand its reticence about Caribbean integration because it is representing East Indians who represent a large population in Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname. And at one point, when Basilio Pandey was in office and the PPP was in office and there was an Indian-led government in Suriname, there was talk among the three about setting up a sub-regional group of the three of them. So the PPP has never been integrationist. If the PPP is integrationist, I challenge them now. Let us talk about a Caribbean vision for our development using our oil resources. What Chavez did for the Caribbean, let us do it in a structured and legal way. The PPP is not going to go there. Yes, they're going to have business people coming in from Trinidad, who are mostly Indo-Trinidadians. Yes, but that's the extent of their integration. They're going to play ball with Mia Motley and play ball with Ralph Gonzalez because, you know, Motley and Gonzalez and others are in that hustling mode, hustling a little aid there, hustling a little aid there. God bless them, you know. But we are saying that the evidence coming out of the boxes at the last elections is irrefutable. Boxes are not normally opened before an election is determined. They're not usually opened. And I remember saying, do not open those boxes. Leave those boxes alone. Oh my God, they cost me nasty, David Hines, including some of my own friends. Some of them don't talk to me up to today. David Hines against democracy. He says, oh, what broke up the boxes and all kind of foolishness. I was saying that if you open those boxes, you're opening a can of worms. And they open the boxes and they open a can of worms and they don't want to deal with the worms now. Two things about those elections that were unusual. Opening the boxes before the elections are announced. It's unconstitutional. It's wrong. But it happened. The other thing that happened is that the United States sanctioned one contestant. Normally you sanction people after an election is decided. An election is decided and people decide, the election is certified and they don't want to leave office. You put sanctions on them then. But the US sanctioned the coalition before the elections were decided, which meant the Americans influenced the outcome of the elections. How can you refer to such an election as free and fair? I am mindful of the charge by the PPP that they saw an attempt to rig an election. They saw Mingo with a piece of cloth, and that Mingo's numbers did not correspond with their SOPs. Well, look, that is hardly on its face enough evidence. That matter needed to go before the court, as all elections are. If you see an attempt to rig an elections, you go to court in a petition. That did not happen. So we do not know whether Mingo's numbers and the PPP's numbers correspond. How do we know that the PPP's SOPs are real SOPs? Remember, in 2015, they found fake SOPs that the PPP attempted to duck in GCOM. And Mr. Lowenfield was able to detect the fake SOPs in 2015. Guyana has a rigging problem. It has a rigging problem. And it's not confined to one party. In the old days, it was confined to the PNC. Not that the other party didn't rig. The other party rigged, but they didn't rig enough to win. When you are in the back of Enterprise, I went to the back of Enterprise. There were two young people, 18, 19, the first time voting, and they went to the office there in Buxton, and they couldn't find their names at the place, brother and sister, 18, 19, and they couldn't find their names at the place of poll that they were directed to. And they wanted to vote. They were so proud that they were getting the chance to vote, and they came to the command center in Buxton. And they found that their names were done at a polling place in Enterprise. Nobody wanted to go in Enterprise. But I put the two young people in my car, and the late Ronald Willibus came with me. And we went and we took the young people all the way at the back of Enterprise. And when we found the polling place, it was a tent that they put up in a ball field at the back of Enterprise. When we got there, nothing was going on. Nobody was there voting. All that was in there was the presiding people and the PPP polling agent. The coalition didn't send the polling agent there because nobody wants to go in at the back of Enterprise and so on. And when I walk in there, they jump. One of them, I think, recognized me, and they jumped. The young people voted and so on. But what I'm saying, if you are there, the presiding officers are all PPP people. The polling agent, the PPP, you do what you want with that box. And that has always been so from the 1960s come right through. In the Indian areas where the PNC can't get black people to go for fear of their safety and so on, they do what they want with those boxes. And I assume the same happened in black communities. that the PPP couldn't find Indians to go into. Rigging is a problem. And at the last election, you know, the PPP, the PNC, in the old days, the way they rig is, had their people vote multiple times. Had their people vote multiple times. There was not one charge of that in 2020. And I can say without anybody pointing a finger, it didn't happen in the area that I worked in on election. There was no multiple voting. In fact, I will tell you a story. Somebody from my village went to vote for their mother, proxy vote, and they didn't have the proper documentation. And the black Bostonian woman said, well, you don't have the proper documentation and you can't vote for your mother. You go home and get the proper documentation and come back. And the word went around that, you know, this young lady was working against the coalition and she didn't want people to vote and so on. And they sent me to see about the matter. I knew the young lady, and I knew that she wasn't working against the coalition interest. She was just going by the rules. I knew that even before I got there. So when I got there at the polling station, I asked, well, what happened? And as I predicted, the young lady said, well, the girl come here and said she wanted to vote for her mother, and she didn't have the proper documentation and said she can't vote. That happened in Buxton, in a black area, where someone from the village who is a supporter of the coalition, but on that day, she was working as an agent of GCOM, and she refused to allow wrongdoing. When I got there and she explained it to me, I shook my head and I said, just as I expected, and I was able to calm the crowd down and to say, well, you know, she's doing her job. She's not engaging in rigging. And they, you know, they listened to me and so on, and I think the young lady went home and got the proper documentation that she needed and came back and was able to vote, you know. The young lady wasn't attempting, she wasn't attempting to beat the system. She didn't have the documents. And she felt that, you know, she should not be sent home to get the document to come back. Why they can't allow her to vote? But the girl tell her, no, the rules is the rules. Go home and get the document and come back. So neither of them was wrong. The one wasn't trying to beat the system. She was saying, well, send me back, man. Let me vote now. And the other lady said, no, the rules say that you have to have this documentation. I am telling you that I saw that in my village in Buxton. So when people talk about rigging election and so on, there are those stories that are not being told. There are those stories that are not being told. And I've told the story here many times of being in Monrepo, one of the areas where the 47 boxes had no documentation. And Brother Nandlal was there with a young man that was caught impersonating another voter. And Nandlal pleaded with me to say, talk to the PNC people, man, and let me settle this thing. He didn't deny that the young man was engaged in skullduggery. He said, you know, this is a matter can be settled between the two parties. And I was passing, going in to carry a polling agent down at the back of Monrepo, and they stopped my car. I didn't want to come out because it was a big crowd there in Monrepo. And the security guys who were there didn't want me to go out, but I insisted on going out, and I went out, and Nandala lay story to me. And I said, well, you know, Nandala, that is not a matter for me to intervene with. This is not a matter between the two parties. This is a matter of wrong and right. And I left and went away. The point I am making is that our election machinery is porous and it can be manipulated. That Bruce Golding doesn't know that. Bruce Golding doesn't know that at the back of Enterprise in a ball field, there's a tent at the back there. And in that tent, there is no opposition agent, because no opposition, you can't find young black people to go into Enterprise at the back there in the middle of the day, much less in the afternoon. And that those people are there, they're all PPP people, and they do what they want with the boxes. Bruce Golding doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. And so therefore it is those are the things that we have to fix. We have to fix those things, because our elections are not going to be above board until we're able to fix those things. The charge against Mingo is one that the numbers that he put up on the cloth doesn't correspond with the SOPs of the PPP. But take the matter to the court and let the court decide that. Don't leave that for GCOM to decide. GCOM decide that it will rectify the matter by opening the boxes. And in opening the boxes, it went from the frying pan into the fire, all house pan all house. And those who were talking about elections rigging, they can't face that fact. They cannot face that fact that elections in 2020, they rigged the hell out of that election. Some of the rigging is clear because they opened the boxes. Some are not so clear. And what GCOM should have done is to say, all right, this matter didn't go before the court, but as GCOM, let us investigate, do our own assessment. Do our own assessment. GCOM has not done that to this day. So there we are, sisters and brothers. The election machinery has to be cleaned. If the elections machinery are not clean, you're forcing parties to enter an election in which the system is rigged against them. And as they did in the local government elections, they will be forced to enter the elections. But they're going into those elections already knowing that the chances of winning squarely are somewhat dimmed. And that does not spell well for the outcome of the elections. Because people are challenging the outcome of the election before it starts. And that's where the instability comes in. We talk about 5 months in 2020. If we go into an election with a messed up system, it won't be 5 months this time. It will be more than 5 months. And it won't be 5 months of back and forth. It'll be 5 months of potential disaster. That's what we are looking at. If we don't want 5 months to reoccur, fix the system before the election. Or else you're going to have a 5-month syndrome again, and it's going to be worse than it was the last time. Just my prediction. Just my prediction. So there we are. It's that time. I gotta go. I'll see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think I have Dr. Jeffrey on tomorrow. We have Dr. Jeffrey on tomorrow. Yes, Dr. Jeffrey on tomorrow. So I got to go. I'll be on GloveSpan tonight. I am going to share the link on our page, Politics 101, and you can join me there. So again, thank you all for coming through tonight. And as we said at the beginning, the handwriting is on the wall. As sure as the sun will rise, this government must fall. It has to go for the good of Guyana. It has to go for the good of Guyana. See you all tomorrow. And those of you who are going to join GloveSpan, I'll see you all later.